My name is Eleanor Davey and I'm a researcher, and I work primarily on a project called The Global History of Modern Humanitarian Action. Some of the most interesting material in our research is not so much about the findings of the material, which is of course fascinating in itself, but the discipline of thinking about history in a sector like the humanitarian sector. This is a policy environment that's notorious for not learning from its own past, for not thinking about what it's done before and how that might then be used in a different way, or perhaps in the same way in the future. What we've really been doing is trying to promote engagement with history, talk to a lot of different people about the history, and see what a difference that might make to the way they think about their own work. It's also fascinating to see, even within the context of really significant changes and what we've seen over the course of the 20th century, which is the time period that we're focusing on, it's really enormous changes in particularly the context in which aid takes place when you look at forces like decolonisation and so on. But you still have these recurring problems, and even the language itself is very, very similar. And just the other day I'd come across a report about relief for a cyclone in the early 1940s, talking about how all the organisations should be dividing up their responsibility to lead different areas of practice, different areas of the response. And it's just like the issues that we're dealing with today. Unlike a lot of HPG projects, this is actually having a double cycle of the integrated program. So it will be running for 4 years. And so our next steps are to really deepen the research that we have already been doing, to expand our case studies to cover a greater number of contexts and places around the world, and to really push more at getting other people to engage with what the use of history might mean to the humanitarian sector. People often ask about what we want to get out of this project and what success might look like in this project. And it's actually a really difficult issue for us. Partly because we're advocating a different way of thinking. We're advocating a different conception of what it might mean when you think about your research and analysis and what kinds of information you need to include. And we're also promoting this engagement and a kind of platform for speaking to actors beyond what are often referred to as the traditional actors and so on. So trying to get people to think differently and speak, to have different conversations, is actually a really tricky thing. In terms of the immediate policy impact, what we'd like to see is much greater engagement with institutional memory, and that's something that any organisation can do more strongly within its own practices. We're also hoping to see more in-depth research around historical context as they relate to current crisis, and that's something that we've been working on and will continue to work on over the next couple of years.